The rain began subtly, a whisper against the tall windows of the old house, before escalating into a symphony of drumming on the slate roof. Ilara stood by the hearth, a goblet of amber liquid warming in her hand, the firelight dancing across the rich crimson velvet of her robe. Midnight. The chiming of the grandfather clock in the hall had just faded, each resonant note a reminder of the hour, and of the man she was waiting for. Her home, a sprawling Victorian nestled deep within a private estate, felt both vast and intimately hers tonight. Shadows stretched long and playful from the flickering flames, painting the antique furniture in shades of shifting gold and sepia. The scent of old wood, beeswax, and the fainter, sweeter memory of the jasmine from the garden, now being washed clean by the downpour, filled the air. She traced the rim of her goblet with a thoughtful finger, her gaze fixed on the mesmerizing ebb and flow of the fire. It had been too long. The last time Julian had been here, the world had been a different color, brighter, sharper, filled with the promise of summer. Now, autumn had descended, bringing with it a melancholic beauty that mirrored the ache in her chest. An ache not of sorrow, but of profound anticipation, a yearning that hummed beneath her skin, a low, persistent thrum. She remembered the way his hands had felt, strong and knowing, as he'd guided her through the waltz at the charity ball. She remembered the way his eyes, the color of aged whiskey, had held hers across the crowded room, a silent conversation passing between them that no one else could decipher. A secret language of desire and understanding. He saw her, truly saw her in a way few others ever had. He saw the woman beneath the composed exterior, the artist, the dreamer, the one who held a fierce, untamed spirit within her elegant frame. A gust of wind rattled the window panes, and Ilara shivered, drawing the velvet closer. It wasn't the cold that chilled her, but the exhilarating thrill that always preceded his arrival. Julian. The very name was a caress on her tongue, a promise whispered in the dark. He had a way of arriving unannounced, yet always perfectly timed, as if sensing the precise moment her resolve might falter, her loneliness deepen into something less manageable. Tonight, however, there had been a message. A simple, almost cryptic note delivered by his driver this morning, tucked beneath a single, perfect midnight blue rose. Midnight. That was all it said. No signature, no other words. But she knew. She had always known. It was their code, their silent agreement, a clandestine rendezvous born from a connection that defied logic and polite society. Ilara moved from the fireplace, her bare feet silent on the Persian rug. She walked to the large bay window, parting the heavy velvet drapes just enough to peer out into the tempestuous night. Rain lashed against the glass, distorting the familiar landscape of her gardens into blurred streaks of green and black. A flash of lightning illuminated the ancient oak at the edge of the property, its gnarled branches reaching like skeletal fingers towards the tumultuous sky. She thought of him, out there somewhere, navigating this wild night. A flicker of worry, quickly replaced by a deeper certainty. Julian was a creature of the elements, comfortable in the storm as much as in the calm. There was an untamed quality to him, a primal strength that resonated with something equally wild within herself. It was this shared wildness, perhaps, that drew them together with such an irresistible pull. Her fingers idly played with the silk cord of her robe, her mind replaying snippets of their last encounter. A stolen kiss in the shadowed alcove of a gallery, the scent of his cologne, a rich, earthy fragrance with a hint of spice, clinging to her skin for hours afterward. The way his thumb had traced the line of her jaw, a feather-light touch that had sent tremors through her entire being. The intensity in his eyes, a silent vow that had left her breathless. She was not a woman prone to impulsive acts, or to surrendering her carefully constructed composure. Yet, with Julian, all her defenses seemed to melt away, leaving her vulnerable and exquisitely alive. He didn't demand. He simply was. And in his presence, she found herself yearning to shed the layers she presented to the world, to reveal the raw, passionate woman beneath. The silence of the house, punctuated only by the storm, seemed to amplify her heartbeat. She felt it, a quickening rhythm, a testament to the potent mix of apprehension and exhilaration coursing through her veins. She smoothed a hand over her hair, a cascade of dark auburn waves that she usually kept neatly pinned, but tonight had allowed to fall loose around her shoulders. She wanted to be undone for him, ready to be tangled in his embrace. Her gaze drifted to the small antique writing desk in the corner, where a half-finished canvas rested on an easel. It was a portrait of a storm-tossed sea, painted in shades of deep indigo and tumultuous gray, mirroring the very night outside. But in the heart of the canvas, a single streak of gold broke through the clouds, a beacon of hope and light. Perhaps it was a subconscious reflection of her own longing for the calm after the storm, for the golden warmth of his presence. A sudden sharp rap echoed through the house, cutting through the drumming rain and the rumbling thunder. Not the hesitant knock of a delivery, nor the polite ring of a social call. This was a firm, deliberate sound, a declaration. He was here. Ilara's breath hitched. A thrill, sharp and sweet, pierced through her. She didn't move immediately, wanting to savor this moment of pure anticipation, this exquisite edge of knowing. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped within its cage. She pressed a hand to her chest, as if to quiet it, to hold on to the last vestiges of her self-possession, before he shattered it entirely. The sound came again, a little louder this time, insistent. He wasn't one for patience, not when it came to her. A small smile played on her lips, a mixture of amusement and surrender. She took a deep breath, letting the scent of rain and old house fill her lungs, grounding her. Then, slowly, deliberately, she walked towards the door. The hallway was dimly lit by a single sconce, casting long dancing shadows. The air grew cooler as she approached the heavy oak front door. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for the cold brass handle. This was it. The threshold between her quiet, solitary world and the vibrant, electric chaos he brought with him. She unlatched the bolts, one by one, the metallic clicks impossibly loud in the hushed house. Then, with a final decisive turn of the handle, she pulled the door open. He stood there, framed by the wild night, a silhouette against the churning darkness. Rain plastered his dark hair to his forehead, glistening on the strong line of his jaw. His tailored overcoat, heavy with moisture, was open, revealing a dark suit beneath. Water dripped from the brim of his fedora, which he held in one hand, while the other rested casually on the doorframe. A picture of understated power. His eyes, those intense whiskey-colored eyes, found hers instantly. They held a depth of emotion that sent a jolt straight through her. A silent greeting, a question, a promise, all swirling within their depths. He didn't smile immediately, just held her gaze, a profound recognition passing between them. A silent acknowledgement of the magnetic pull that had drawn him through the storm, to her door. "Ilara," he murmured, his voice a low, resonant rumble, a sound that always made her nerve endings hum. It was a sound that belonged to the night, to secrets, to intimate whispers. "Julian," she managed, her voice a little breathy, softer than she intended. The chill from outside swirled in, carrying with it the fresh, earthy scent of rain and his subtle, intoxicating cologne. She wanted to reach out, to touch the water droplets clinging to his eyelashes, to feel the warmth of his skin beneath the cold rain. He stepped across the threshold, bringing with him the storm's raw energy, yet his presence instantly filled the space with a different kind of calm. A centered, powerful stillness that was uniquely his. The rain-soaked overcoat came off first, then the fedora, placed carefully on the antique hall table. He ran a hand through his damp hair, pushing it back from his face, revealing the sharp planes of his cheekbones, the slight stubble that shadowed his jaw. He looked at her again, a slow, appraising gaze that started from her unbound hair, drifted over the crimson velvet robe, and lingered on her bare feet, before returning to her eyes. There was an unspoken question in his look, an invitation. "You look," he began, his voice trailing off as he stepped closer, closing the distance between them. "As if you were waiting." "I was," she confessed, her voice barely a whisper. The air around them crackled with an almost palpable tension, a delicious current that left her breathless. She could feel the heat radiating from his body, The subtle scent of him, now closer, more potent. It was a scent that had haunted her dreams, a memory that had been etched into her very being. He reached out, his hand hesitating for a fraction of a second before gently cupping her cheek. His skin was cool from the rain, but beneath it, a warmth bloomed, spreading like wildfire through her. His thumb stroked softly, tenderly along her jawline, sending shivers down her spine. Her eyes fluttered closed for a moment, savoring the exquisite sensation, the intimate contact she had longed for. "Midnight," he repeated, his voice even lower now, a husky murmur that vibrated through her. "A fitting hour for us, wouldn't you agree?" She opened her eyes, meeting his gaze, feeling herself drown in their depths. "Always," she whispered, her hand instinctively rising to cover his on her cheek, pressing it closer. The romantic tension, thick and intoxicating, was now a living thing between them, pulling them irrevocably together. He leaned in, his gaze dropping to her lips, a silent question. She tilted her head slightly, offering them to him, her breath catching in her throat. The anticipation was almost unbearable, a sweet agony. His scent filled her senses, overwhelming everything else. The storm outside faded into a distant roar. All that mattered was the space between them, shrinking with every heartbeat. His lips, cool and firm, met hers. It was a soft, hesitant touch at first, a gentle exploration, a testing of the waters. Then, as if a dam had broken, the kiss deepened, becoming more urgent, more demanding. His hand moved from her cheek, tangling in her loose hair, holding her head as he angled their mouths for a more profound connection. Ilara's fingers clutched at the lapels of his damp suit jacket, holding on as if to steady herself against the intoxicating rush of sensation. Her body leaned into his, craving the solid warmth of him, the familiar strength. The taste of him was intoxicating, a potent mix of rain, a faint hint of whiskey, and something uniquely Julian, a taste she had yearned for with a fierce, aching longing. He kissed her deeply, thoroughly, a kiss that spoke of absence, of longing, of a hunger barely contained. Her lips parted beneath his, inviting him deeper, and he accepted the invitation with a low groan that vibrated against her mouth. His tongue explored hers, a tender dance that quickly escalated into a passionate embrace. He broke the kiss. Reluctantly, his forehead resting against hers, their breaths mingling ragged and fast. His eyes were dark, heavy-lidded, filled with a raw desire that mirrored her own. His thumb brushed over her swollen lips, a tender, possessive gesture. "I've missed you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion, his gaze never leaving hers. "Every damn moment." "And you," she breathed back, her fingers still clutching his jacket, unwilling to let go. Her body throbbed with a delicious ache, a yearning for more, for everything he promised. The air around them was charged, thick with unspoken desires, with the history of their shared passion, and the tantalizing promise of the night ahead. He straightened, but kept her close, his arm still around her waist. His eyes, still dark with desire, now held a glint of mischief. "Shall we escape this draft, Ilara? There are other rooms in this grand house that might be more conducive to conversation." His gaze dropped meaningfully to her lips once more, and a slow, sensual smile spread across his face. A smile that promised delicious sin and profound pleasure. Ilara's heart pounded a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She knew exactly what kind of conversation he meant. A shiver, not of cold, but of delicious anticipation, ran through her. She met his gaze, her own eyes alight with a passion that had been dormant for too long, now fully awakened by his presence. "Lead the way, Julian," she whispered, her voice husky, her fingers tightening around his arm, ready to follow him wherever he might lead, into the heart of the midnight storm, or into the intoxicating depths of their shared desire. The night was young, and their story just beginning to unfold. He offered her no preamble, no explanation, simply a silent, knowing invitation in his eyes that spoke volumes. The flickering gaslight in the hallway seemed to dim, focusing all attention on the magnetic pull between them. Julian's hand, still warm and firm, shifted on her arm, not releasing her, but guiding her with a subtle pressure. She felt herself drawn forward, a willing participant in a dance whose steps were only just revealing themselves. The grand entryway gave way to a long, softly lit corridor. The walls adorned with dark, antique tapestries that absorbed the sound, lending an air of hushed reverence to their passage. Each step echoed slightly on the polished hardwood floors, a counterpoint to the distant rumble of thunder that now sounded less like a threat and more like a primal drumbeat accompanying their unfolding narrative. The air, though still carrying the faint, clean scent of the rain-washed night, was also infused with the deeper, richer aromas of old wood, aged leather, and something uniquely Julian, a subtle blend of sandalwood, worn paper, and a faint, almost imperceptible hint of a fine, dark liquor. It was an intoxicating mix that wrapped around her, pulling her deeper into his world. He led her past closed doors, each one a mystery, until they reached a set of imposing, dark wood doors, slightly ajar. A warm, golden glow spilled from the crack, and she could hear the comforting crackle and pop of a roaring fire within. Julian pushed the doors open fully, revealing a room that seemed to have been conjured from her most secret desires. It was a library, vast yet incredibly intimate, its walls lined floor to ceiling, with books that seemed to hum with untold stories. Their spines, in various shades of leather and cloth, created a rich tapestry of knowledge and imagination. A massive stone fireplace dominated one wall, a symphony of flames dancing within its hearth, casting long shifting shadows across the room. Before it, a plush, oversized Chesterfield sofa, upholstered in deep emerald velvet, invited repose, its cushions already yielding to the warmth of the fire. 2 wing-back armchairs flanked it, and a low, heavy oak table sat between them, holding a scattering of leather-bound journals and a half-empty decanter of amber liquid. The storm outside seemed to recede, its fury muted by the thick walls and the comforting embrace of the room. Here, within these hallowed walls, only the fire and the man beside her held sway. Julian released her arm, his fingers trailing lightly down her sleeve, a whisper of a touch that left a tingling warmth in its weight. He moved further into the room, his movements fluid and graceful, a panther in his own domain. He turned, leaning casually against the mantelpiece, the firelight catching the sharp planes of his face, illuminating the intensity in his eyes. "Make yourself comfortable, Alara," he said, his voice a low rumble that resonated through the quiet space. It was an invitation, a command, and a promise, all rolled into one. He gestured vaguely towards the sofa, but his gaze never left hers, holding her captive. She felt a blush creep up her neck, a delicious heat that had nothing to do with the fire. Her earlier composure, carefully constructed, was unraveling at an alarming rate under his unwavering scrutiny. She walked towards the sofa, her heels sinking slightly into the thick Persian rug that covered the floor, feeling every fiber of her being attuned to his presence. The velvet cushions beckoned, but she hesitated, standing before the warmth of the hearth, letting the heat soak into her skin, a counterpoint to the chill that had clung to her from the storm. "It's magnificent," she breathed, her voice a little shaky, gesturing vaguely at the room. It was an inadequate word for the sanctuary he had created, a testament to a life lived with passion and intellect. Julian offered a faint, enigmatic smile. "It's where I find my peace, and sometimes, my inspiration." His eyes flickered to her, and a spark seemed to pass between them, igniting something new and vibrant in the air. He pushed off the mantelpiece, moving towards the decanter on the table. "Whiskey, or perhaps something warmer." "Whiskey would be perfect," she managed, surprised by her own boldness. She rarely drank spirits, but tonight felt like a night for breaking rules, for indulging in something potent and fiery. He poured 2 generous measures into heavy crystal tumblers, the amber liquid glinting like captured starlight. The clink of glass was the only sound for a moment, an intimate punctuation mark in their silent conversation. He handed her a glass, his fingers brushing hers, a brief, electrifying contact that sent a jolt through her. She clutched the cool, heavy glass, the warmth of the whiskey a welcome counterpoint to the lingering shiver of anticipation. "To unexpected evenings," he murmured, raising his glass, his eyes dark and unfathomable as they met hers over the rim. "To unexpected evenings," she echoed, taking a cautious sip. The whiskey was smooth, smoky and potent, spreading a delicious warmth through her chest. It settled her nerves yet simultaneously heightened her senses. He watched her, his gaze lingering on her lips as she drank. She felt a magnetic pull to sit beside him, to bridge the small distance that separated them, but a lingering sense of propriety held her captive. Instead, she turned to the fire, letting its hypnotic dance mesmerize her, trying to regain some semblance of control. The storm outside raged anew, a gust of wind rattling the windows. But inside, they were cocooned in a bubble of warmth and unspoken desire. Julian moved then, settling into one of the wingback chairs opposite the sofa. He didn't invite her to sit beside him, nor did he push her away. He simply observed, allowing her to choose her own pace, her own comfort. The unspoken challenge was thrilling. She found herself drawn to the sofa, sinking into its plush depths, the velvet cool against her skin at first, then molding to her form. She curled her legs beneath her, feeling a sudden, intense comfort, as if this place, this moment, had been waiting for her. "Tell me, Alara," he began, his voice soft, almost a caress, "what brings you out into such a wild night?" He took a slow sip of his whiskey, his gaze never leaving hers. She hesitated, wondering how much to reveal. A restless spirit, perhaps, she mused, a small wry smile playing on her lips. And a need for something different. "My usual life, while pleasant, has become a little too predictable." She met his gaze directly, a silent challenge in her own eyes. "And you, Julian? What keeps you in this magnificent solitude?" He leaned back, the firelight painting his profile in shades of gold and shadow. "Solitude has its own rhythm," he replied, a hint of melancholy in his tone, quickly masked. "It allows for thought, for creation. But even the most dedicated hermit appreciates a break in the pattern." His eyes twinkled with a knowing light. "Especially when the break is as illuminating as tonight." The air between them thickened, charged with unspoken meanings. The storm outside was a distant echo, their world reduced to the flickering fire, the rich scent of whiskey and old books, and the intense, almost tangible connection that thrummed between them. She felt herself relaxing, truly relaxing, for the first time in what felt like years. The tension in her shoulders eased, her posture softened. She allowed herself to simply be in his presence, to absorb the warmth, the mystery, the undeniable allure of him. He finished his whiskey, placing the glass on the table with a soft thud. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, he rose from his chair. Her breath caught in her throat. Every muscle in her body tensed, anticipating his next move. Would he sit beside her? Would he lean in? The suspense was exquisite. He walked past the table, towards the fire, and knelt, poking gently at the logs with a brass poker. Sparks flew up into the chimney, a brief, fiery shower. The mundane act, performed with such focused intensity, only heightened his magnetism. He seemed to embody the raw, untamed power of the fire itself. "Cold?" he asked, not looking at her, his voice a low murmur against the crackle of the flames. "No," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Not at all. Quite the opposite." She felt a flush spread across her skin, a delicious heat that had nothing to do with the fire. He stood, dusting his hands lightly. Then, with a movement that was both casual and utterly deliberate, he walked to the sofa. He didn't sit down. Instead, he simply stood before her, close enough that she could feel the radiating warmth of his body, smell the intoxicating scent of him more acutely. The top button of his shirt was undone, revealing a sliver of taut, bronzed skin, a tantalizing hint of what lay beneath. His tie was slightly loosened, a concession to the late hour and the intimacy of the moment. His gaze dropped to her mouth, lingering there, then slowly, deliberately, rose to meet her eyes. The unspoken question in his depths was a powerful current, pulling her in. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drum beat in the quiet room. She felt herself leaning forward almost imperceptibly, drawn by an irresistible force. "You have a magnificent fire within you, Alara," he said, his voice dropping to a husky whisper that seemed to bypass her ears and resonate directly in her soul. "I see it in your eyes. A passion that glows even in the darkest storm." His hand, large and warm, reached out, not to touch her face, but to gently cup the nape of her neck, his thumb tracing the delicate curve of her jawline. A gasp escaped her lips, a soft, involuntary sound. His touch was electric, sending shivers down her spine, yet it was also incredibly tender, reassuring. He held her gaze, a silent conversation passing between them. A deep, primal understanding that transcended words. "And you, Julian," she managed, her voice trembling slightly. "You are the storm itself, wild, beautiful, and utterly captivating." His thumb stroked her skin, a feather-light touch that sent goosebumps prickling along her arms. He leaned closer, the scent of him enveloping her, drowning out all else. His eyes, dark as midnight, held hers, a silent question, an invitation she couldn't refuse. Her own eyes fluttered closed for a brief moment, savoring the exquisite anticipation. When she opened them, his face was inches from hers. She could feel the warmth of his breath on her lips, taste the ghost of whiskey on his. Her gaze dropped to his mouth, those firm, sculpted lips that now seemed to promise everything she had ever longed for. He moved slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, but she found herself leaning in, meeting him halfway. His lips, soft yet firm, finally met hers. It was a kiss that started gently, a tender exploration, a soft pressing of mouths that tasted of whiskey and fire, and something uniquely him. A sigh escaped her, a sound of pure contentment. She felt herself melt into him, her hand instinctively rising to cup his cheek, her fingers tangling in the silken strands of his dark hair. The kiss deepened, slowly, exquisitely. It was not a violent, demanding kiss, but one of profound tenderness and escalating passion. His lips moved over hers with a slow, deliberate rhythm, coaxing a response from her that was both eager and unhurried. She felt a spark ignite deep within her, a delicious warmth spreading through her veins, chasing away any lingering chill from the storm. His hand tightened subtly on her neck, guiding her, tilting her head just so, allowing for a deeper, more intimate connection. She responded with an intensity that surprised her, her body arching into his, her fingers clutching at his hair, holding him close. Her lips parted, inviting him in, and he accepted, his tongue a soft, velvet exploration that sent shivers of pure pleasure through her. The world outside the library, outside this kiss, ceased to exist. There was only the warmth of his mouth on hers, the soft rasp of his stubble against her skin, the intoxicating scent of him, and the powerful surge of desire that coursed through her. She felt herself losing control, willingly, joyfully, surrendering to the tide of sensation that threatened to overwhelm her. He broke the kiss slowly, lingeringly, pulling back just enough for their breaths to mingle, their foreheads to touch. His eyes, dark and heavy-lidded, gazed into hers, reflecting the raw passion that now consumed her. "Ilara," he breathed, his voice hoarse, a tremor running through it. "You are more potent than any storm." She smiled, a soft, radiant smile that felt entirely new to her. "And you, Julian, are the calm after it, and the thunder within it." He chuckled, a low, rumbling sound that vibrated through her. His fingers moved from her neck, tracing a path down her collarbone, over the delicate fabric of her dress, finally resting on her shoulder. The weight of his hand was a comforting pressure, a promise of more. "May I?" he asked, his gaze dropping to her scarf, which still clung to her neck, a barrier between his touch and her skin. She nodded, unable to speak, her throat tight with emotion and anticipation. He untied the knot with slow, deliberate movements, his fingers brushing against her skin, sending delicious tingles through her. The silk scarf, a flimsy barrier, slipped away, falling silently to the floor. His eyes, heavy with desire, lingered on her bare neck, tracing the pulse that now beat wildly there. He leaned in again, pressing a soft kiss to the sensitive skin just beneath her ear, sending another wave of shivers through her. Her head fell back, exposing more of her throat, an offering he seemed to understand implicitly. He trailed a line of soft kisses down her neck, each one a brushfire, igniting a deeper flame within her. Her hands, still tangled in his hair, urged him closer, pulling him down until his body was pressed against hers, the hard planes of his chest a thrilling contrast to the softness of her own. She felt the undeniable hardness of his desire against her, a silent testament to the passion that flared between them. He moved his hands from her shoulders, slowly, deliberately, to her waist, his fingers splaying across her back, pulling her even tighter against him. She could feel the heat radiating from him, the solid strength of his body. The world tilted, her senses overwhelmed by the sheer intensity of his presence. "You are exquisite, Ilara," he whispered against her skin, his voice thick with emotion. "Every curve, every breath, every secret thought." She gasped, a soft, involuntary sound, as his hands slid lower, tracing the curve of her spine, then rising again, his thumbs brushing the delicate lace of her bra beneath the fabric of her dress. It was a tentative touch, yet incredibly bold, igniting a new wave of heat deep within her. Her fingers tightened in his hair, her nails gently scraping his scalp, a purely instinctive reaction to the delicious torment he was inflicting. She wanted him closer, wanted more, wanted to shed every layer that separated them. He seemed to read her thoughts, his lips curving into a slow, knowing smile. He pulled back slightly, his eyes still locked on hers, a silent question in their depth. With a gentle pressure, he encouraged her to stand. She rose unsteadily, her legs feeling like jelly, her body trembling with a mixture of desire and vulnerability. Now they stood face to face, her hands still clutching his shoulders, his hands still firm on her waist. The fire behind them cast their figures in a golden glow, their shadows dancing on the high, book-lined walls. He reached out, his fingers brushing the small, ornate buttons that ran down the front of her dress. "May I?" he asked again, his voice a low, husky whisper that sent shivers down her spine. The question was unnecessary, but the politeness, the deference, only made the gesture more potent, more seductive. She nodded, her breath catching in her throat. Her gaze was fixed on his hands, watching them as they slowly, deliberately began to unbutton her dress. Each button released was a small act of surrender, a step deeper into the intoxicating labyrinth of their shared desire. His fingers were deft, surprisingly gentle, brushing against her skin as they worked their way down, revealing a sliver of her décolletage, then the delicate lace of her chemise beneath. The storm outside raged on, a wild, untamed symphony, but inside, in the warm, firelit sanctuary of his library, a different kind of storm was brewing, one of escalating passion and undeniable desire. Her story, just beginning to unfold, promised to be as tempestuous and beautiful as the night itself. She was ready to be swept away. His fingers, surprisingly gentle, brushed against her skin as they worked their way down, revealing a sliver of her décolletage, then the delicate lace of her chemise beneath. The storm outside raged on, a wild, untamed symphony, but inside, in the warm, firelit sanctuary of his library, a different kind of storm was brewing, one of escalating passion and undeniable desire. Her story, just beginning to unfold, promised to be as tempestuous and beautiful as the night itself. She was ready to be swept away. His hands paused at the last few buttons, his knuckles grazing the tender skin just above her breasts. A soft gasp escaped her lips, a sound swallowed by the roar of the wind against the leaded panes. His gaze, dark and intense, met hers, a silent question passing between them. Hers was a silent, eager assent, a tremor running through her as she leaned into his touch, her eyes fluttering shut for a moment, savoring the exquisite anticipation. The scent of him, old books, rich leather, and something uniquely masculine, like a walk through a pine forest after rain, filled her senses, intoxicating and grounding all at once. When her eyes opened again, he was even closer, his breath warm against her cheek. He finally unfastened the last button, and the silk of her gown parted, falling open to reveal the delicate ivory lace of her chemise. It clung to her curves, a mere whisper of fabric, hinting at the treasures beneath. His fingers, no longer just unbuttoning, began to trace the scalloped edge of the lace, following the curve of her collarbone down to the soft swell of her breast. A shiver not of cold, but of pure delight coursed through her. She felt herself flush, a delicious warmth spreading from her chest outward. The fire in the hearth crackled, mirroring the heat now gathering low in her belly. "Beautiful," he murmured, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through her, sending delicious tendrils of sensation spiraling. He wasn't just looking at her. He was seeing her, appreciating every curve, every shadow, every flush of desire that now painted her skin. He reached out, his hand cupping her jaw, his thumb stroking the sensitive skin just beneath her earlobe. Her head tilted instinctively, granting him access. He leaned in slowly, giving her ample time to pull away, but the thought never even flickered. Her lips parted slightly in invitation, her gaze fixed on his. Their breaths mingled, warm and sweet, charged with unspoken longing. Then his lips finally met hers. It was a kiss that started with a tender inquiry, a soft press that tasted of fire-warmed brandy and pure longing. But it quickly deepened, blooming into something more fervent, more demanding. His arm snaked around her waist, pulling her flush against him, the hard planes of his body pressing into her softness. She felt the reassuring strength of his chest, the solid beat of his heart against her own. Her hands, almost without conscious thought, rose to entwine themselves in the thick, dark hair at the nape of his neck, pulling him even closer, deepening the kiss until the world outside, even the raging storm, faded into a distant hum. Her knees felt weak, a delightful dizziness swirling in her head. She surrendered to the sensation, to the overwhelming pull of his mouth on hers, to the intoxicating dance of their tongues. Every nerve ending in her body seemed to awaken, humming with a vibrant electric energy. When he finally broke the kiss, a soft moan escaped her, a sound of wanting, of needing more. He rested his forehead against hers, their breaths still ragged, eyes still closed for a moment. "You taste like a dream," he whispered, his voice husky with emotion. She opened her eyes, finding his dark gaze full of a smoldering heat that promised to consume them both. A smile, slow and sensual, curved her lips. "And you, my lord," she purred, her voice a little breathless, "tastes like the most exquisite temptation." He chuckled, a low, rich sound that made her insides flutter. His hands, which had been holding her close, began to roam again. One slipped beneath the silk of her open gown, finding the bare skin of her waist beneath the chemise. His touch was warm, firm, sending a fresh wave of shivers through her. The other hand traced the delicate lace of her shoulder strap, slowly, deliberately, as if savoring each moment. "This is exquisite," he murmured, his thumb brushing over the soft rise of her breast, just above the lace. She arched into the touch, a soft sigh escaping her. "But I suspect," he continued, his voice dropping to a seductive whisper, "that the true beauty lies beneath." With a gentle tug, he slipped one strap of her chemise down her arm, exposing the smooth curve of her shoulder. The cool air of the library, though warm from the fire, felt delicious against her suddenly bare skin. Then the other strap followed, and with a soft rustle, the delicate garment began to slide down her body, pooling at her feet like a forgotten cloud. She stood before him, clad only in the soft glow of the firelight, her skin flushed, her breath coming in shallow gasps. A moment of vulnerability washed over her, a fleeting shyness, quickly replaced by a surge of exhilarating confidence under his adoring gaze. He looked at her as if she were the most precious, the most desirable creature he had ever seen. His eyes lingered on the swell of her breasts, the slender curve of her waist, the gentle flare of her hips. He didn't speak, but his gaze was a silent symphony of admiration and profound desire. She felt herself blossom under his scrutiny, her skin tingling, her core aching with a sweet, insistent throb. He reached out, his fingers tracing the line of her collarbone down to the soft valley between her breasts. His touch was light, reverent, yet it ignited a deep, fiery longing within her. She instinctively leaned into him, her hands resting lightly on his chest, feeling the strong, steady beat of his heart beneath the fine linen of his shirt. "You are perfection," he breathed, his voice thick with emotion. He lowered his head, not to kiss her lips again, but to press a soft, lingering kiss to the delicate hollow of her throat, sending a jolt of pure pleasure through her. His lips, warm and soft, trailed down her neck, over her collarbone, each kiss a promise, a soft declaration of intent. She tilted her head back, her eyes closing, savoring the exquisite sensation. Her fingers gripped his shirt, crumpling the fabric slightly, as if to anchor herself in the rising tide of sensation. His hands moved from her waist, sliding up her back, drawing her closer still until their bodies were almost flush, the heat emanating from him a delicious warmth against her naked skin. "My lord," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the crackle of the fire. "Please." The word hung in the air, unfinished, yet perfectly understood. It was a plea for more, for an end to the delicious torture of anticipation, for him to claim her completely. He lifted his head, his eyes burning into hers. "Patience, my sweet," he murmured, a mischievous glint in his gaze. "We have all night, and I intend to savor every moment of unwrapping this most exquisite gift." With a gentle push, he guided her backwards, towards the plush velvet chaise lounge, nestled beside the warmth of the roaring fire. The thick oriental rug beneath her bare feet felt soft and luxurious. She sank onto the chaise, her body pliant and eager. He knelt before her, his gaze still fixed on hers, a silent question in his eyes. She responded with a soft, inviting smile, a silent permission for him to continue his beautiful exploration. He reached for her foot, his fingers warm as they closed around her ankle. With a slow, deliberate movement, he lifted her foot, his thumb tracing the delicate arch. She gasped softly as he began to unlace her satin slipper, his touch sending shivers up her leg. One slipper, then the other was removed, placed gently on the rug beside them. Then he did the same for her stockings, the delicate silk peeling away from her skin under his careful ministrations, revealing the soft, untouched skin beneath. Each slow, sensual movement was a deliberate act of adoration, heightening the tension, building the desire. When her feet were finally bare, he didn't stop. Instead, he lifted one foot to his lips, pressing a soft, lingering kiss to her in step. A jolt, like liquid fire, shot through her, and she bit her lip to stifle a moan. He looked up at her, a wicked smile playing on his lips, clearly delighted by her reaction. "You feel everything, don't you?" he whispered, his voice a low, teasing murmur. "Only when you touch me," she confessed, her voice breathy, her eyes wide with a mixture of desire and something akin to awe. He leaned in, his hands sliding up her bare legs, pushing the silk gown further down until it was nothing but a forgotten heap around her ankles. He kissed her knee, then her inner thigh, his lips warm and moist against her sensitive skin. Her fingers clenched the velvet of the chaise, her back arching slightly, an involuntary response to the exquisite sensations he was so skillfully evoking. "And I," he replied, his voice a low growl, "feel everything when I touch you." His hands continued their journey, exploring the soft, untouched skin of her thighs, moving higher, closer to the very core of her being. She felt herself tremble, her breath catching in her throat. The anticipation was almost unbearable, a sweet, aching pressure building deep within her. He finally reached the lace edge of her knickers, his fingers hovering there for a tantalizing moment. Her eyes met his, silently pleading. He smiled, a slow, knowing smile, and with another gentle tug, the last barrier of fabric was removed, leaving her utterly exposed to his gaze, to his touch, to the warmth of the fire. A flush of crimson spread across her skin, but it was not shame. It was pure, unadulterated desire, a vibrant testament to the fire he had ignited within her. She lay back against the velvet, her body open and inviting, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. He leaned over her, his eyes devouring every inch of her, a look of profound reverence mingled with fierce passion. He didn't rush. He simply looked, letting his gaze convey the depth of his desire, the intensity of his longing. Then, he lowered his head, tracing the curve of her hip with his lips, moving slowly, deliberately towards the silken tangle between her legs. Her breath hitched. Her fingers curled into fists, then relaxed, opening to receive him. She was ready. More than ready. But he surprised her again. Instead of moving directly to the most intimate part of her, he straightened, his gaze still holding hers. A slow, sensual smile spread across his face. "Now," he said, his voice a low, commanding whisper, "your turn." He rose from his kneeling position, standing before her, a magnificent figure in the firelight. His tailored coat was already shed, lying discarded on a nearby armchair. Now he began to unbutton his shirt, his eyes never leaving hers. Each button released revealed a sliver of taut, muscled skin, a dark swirl of hair on his chest. Her gaze, now emboldened, followed his every movement. She watched, fascinated, as he slowly, deliberately divested himself of his shirt. When it finally came free, he shrugged it off, letting it fall to the floor with a soft sigh. Her breath caught in her throat. His chest was broad, powerful, dusted with a tantalizing expanse of dark hair that narrowed to a delectable line towards his navel. Muscles rippled beneath his skin as he moved, a testament to his strength and vitality. She reached out, her fingers trembling slightly, and traced the line of his collarbone, feeling the warmth of his skin, the powerful beat of his heart beneath her palm. He leaned into her touch, a soft groan escaping his lips. "You've no idea," he murmured, "how long I've wanted your hands on me." "And I," she whispered back, her voice husky with desire, "have dreamed of touching you." Her hands slid further down, exploring the planes of his chest, the tautness of his abdomen. She felt the subtle tremor that ran through him under her touch, a response that thrilled her to her core. He was as eager as she was, his control a thin veneer over a roaring fire. He unbuckled his belt, the soft rasp of leather echoing in the quiet room. Her eyes widened, a thrill of anticipation coursing through her. He unfastened the button of his trousers, and with a slow, deliberate movement, began to lower the zipper. She watched, mesmerized, as the fabric parted, revealing the dark, taut skin beneath. Her gaze dropped lower, drawn by an irresistible force, to the burgeoning evidence of his desire, straining against the confines of his undergarments. A sharp intake of breath escaped her lips. He was magnificent. He kicked off his polished boots, then pushed his trousers and drawers down, revealing the full, glorious extent of his masculinity. He stood before her, completely naked, his body a testament to strength and raw, untamed desire. The firelight danced over his skin, highlighting the lean muscle, the powerful lines of his body. Her eyes devoured him, tracing every curve, every shadow. He was a vision of masculine beauty, every inch of him radiating strength and potent allure. She felt a profound sense of awe, mingled with an almost unbearable longing. He reached for her, his eyes locked on hers, and lifted her from the chaise lounge, cradling her effortlessly in his arms. Her legs instinctively wrapped around his waist, her body pressing flush against his. The feel of his hard, warm skin against her own was an electric shock, sending waves of pleasure through her. "My library," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion, "has seen many secrets, but none as beautiful as this." He carried her out of the library, the storm still raging outside, but its ferocity now seemed a distant, muted backdrop to the roaring tempest that had erupted within them. The journey through the dimly lit corridors was a blur, her face buried in the crook of his neck, inhaling his intoxicating scent, feeling the powerful rhythm of his stride. He carried her into his bedchamber, a sanctuary of rich, dark wood and soft, inviting fabrics. A fire glowed in the hearth here too, casting dancing shadows on the walls. The massive four-poster bed, draped with heavy velvet curtains, looked like a haven, a promise of untold delights. He lowered her gently onto the silken sheets, her body sinking into the luxurious softness. She lay there, her gaze fixed on him as he stood beside the bed, his eyes blazing with a fierce, possessive love. He was breathtaking, a powerful primal force that both thrilled and captivated her. He knelt beside the bed, his hand reaching out to cup her cheek. "Are you ready, my heart?" he whispered, his thumb stroking her skin. Her answer was a soft, guttural sound, a wordless affirmation of her absolute readiness, her boundless desire. She reached up, her fingers threading into his hair, pulling him down for another kiss. This kiss was different from the ones before. It was deeper, more urgent, more desperate. It was a kiss of complete surrender, of unbridled passion. Their bodies pressed together, bare skin against bare skin, a symphony of touch and sensation. His chest against her breasts, his hard thighs against hers, the delightful friction of their bodies igniting every nerve ending. He moved over her, his weight supported by his arms, his gaze still locked on hers. He kissed her eyelids, her forehead, the tip of her nose, then finally, her lips again, a long, lingering kiss that promised everything. His hands began their journey anew, exploring her curves with a reverence that melted her resistance. His fingers tangled in the hair at her temples, gently pulling her head back as his lips descended to her neck, leaving a trail of fire in their wake. Her head lolled back, a soft moan escaping her lips as he continued his delicious assault. He moved lower, his lips tracing the line of her collarbone, then venturing further, to the soft swell of her breast. She gasped as his mouth closed over one peak, his tongue laving the sensitive skin, teasing, tasting, sending exquisite shivers through her entire being. Her hands moved to his shoulders, gripping him tightly, arching her back, offering herself more fully to his tender ministrations. The world narrowed to the feel of his mouth on her, the rasp of his stubble against her skin, the sweet, aching throb that gathered deep within her. He moved to her other breast, lavishing it with the same fervent attention, drawing out the sensations until she was a trembling mess of longing. His hand slid down her belly, warm and firm, coming to rest at the apex of her thighs. His fingers danced teasingly, just at the entrance to her most secret place, sending sparks of pure pleasure through her. She gasped, her hips instinctively arching, silently pleading for his touch. "So eager," he murmured against her skin, his voice thick with desire, "so beautiful." He finally gave in to her silent plea, his fingers gently parting her, exploring the delicate folds, finding the moist, throbbing core of her desire. A wave of intense pleasure washed over her, a deep, resonant hum that vibrated through her entire being. She cried out, a soft, guttural sound of pure ecstasy. He continued his exquisite torture, his fingers moving with a practiced expertise that brought her closer and closer to the brink. Her body thrummed, alive with sensation, every nerve ending singing. The storm outside might have raged, but the tempest within her was far more powerful, far more consuming. She was on the edge, teetering on the precipice of oblivion, ready to fall into the abyss of pleasure he so expertly created. His lips met hers again, a deep, hungry kiss that tasted of her own burgeoning desire, of the raw, untamed passion that now consumed them both. Her body arched, pressing against him, silently begging for release. He held her close, his breath ragged against her ear, his body trembling with the same fierce desire that coursed through her. The storm outside had begun to wane, but their personal tempest was only just reaching its crescendo, promising a deluge of sensation, a complete and utter surrender. He lifted her effortlessly into his arms, carrying her as if she weighed no more than a whisper, his gaze never leaving hers. Her arms instinctively wrapped around his neck, her fingers tangling in the soft hair at his nape, pulling him closer. The scent of him, rain, wood smoke, and a primal masculine warmth filled her senses, intoxicating her. He carried her through the dim cabin, past the dying embers of the fireplace, towards the bedroom, where the only light was the faint, silver glow filtering through the large window, a testament to the storm's retreating fury. He set her down gently beside the bed, but their bodies remained pressed together, a silent conversation passing between them. His hands, warm and strong, moved from her waist, tracing the curve of her spine, sending shivers of anticipation through her. He found the delicate buttons of her blouse, his touch careful, reverent, yet charged with an undeniable hunger. Each button released felt like a sigh, a further shedding of inhibitions. She helped him, her fingers clumsy with desire as she unfastened her own clothing, eager to feel the cool air on her skin, then his warmth against it. When her blouse fell open, revealing the lace of her camisole beneath, his eyes darkened, a silent appreciation that made her heart pound. He leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to the hollow of her throat, then lower, along the swell of her breast above the lace. A soft moan escaped her lips, a sound she barely recognized as her own. She reached for him then, her hands going to the buttons of his shirt, her touch mirroring his earlier tenderness. He shrugged out of the garment, his broad shoulders and muscular chest revealed, a testament to his strength, a sight that made her breath catch. There was no rush, no frantic tearing away of fabric, but rather a slow, deliberate unveiling, a shared ritual of intimacy. They moved together, a graceful dance of desire, helping each other shed the layers that separated them from absolute union. Her skirt rustled to the floor, followed by the whisper of her stockings. He knelt before her, his gaze holding hers as he slipped off her shoes, then his own. Each touch a spark, igniting a deeper flame within her. Soon they stood bare before each other, illuminated by the pale moonlight, their bodies alight with a fierce, beautiful vulnerability. She felt no shame, only an overwhelming sense of rightness, of belonging. His eyes, dark and intense, roamed over her, making her feel utterly seen, utterly cherished. He reached out, his fingers lightly tracing the curve of her hip, then her thigh, a path of fire left in their wake. She mirrored his touch, her hand finding the warm skin of his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heart against her palm. He led her to the bed, the soft mattress yielding beneath them as they sank onto it. The sheets, cool against her heated skin, soon warmed to their shared temperature. He pulled her close, their naked bodies meeting with a delicious sigh, every curve and plane aligning, as if made for each other. His lips found hers again, a deeper, more languid kiss this time. Slow and exploratory, tasting of the promise that hung heavy in the air. His hands continued their tender exploration, mapping the landscape of her body, lingering at her waist, the small of her back, the soft curve of her bottom. She arched into his touch, her fingers digging gently into his shoulders, pulling him even closer, desperate to feel every inch of him against her. He whispered her name, a husky rumble against her ear, and the sound alone sent shivers down her spine, a profound affirmation of their connection. He moved above her then, supporting himself on his forearms, gazing down at her with an intensity that took her breath away. His eyes, usually so guarded, were now open, vulnerable, filled with a raw emotion that mirrored her own. He leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead, then her eyelids, her nose, before returning to her lips, drawing out the moment, building the exquisite tension between them. "Beautiful," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. "So incredibly beautiful." Her heart swelled with a feeling she couldn't quite name, a profound sense of being cherished, desired, and truly seen. She reached up, cupping his face in her hands, her thumbs caressing his cheekbones. "You too," she whispered back, her voice barely audible. "So incredibly. Everything." His hips pressed gently against hers. A silent question, a soft friction that sent a jolt of pleasure through her. She responded instinctively, arching against him, her body silently pleading for more. He took a shaky breath, his gaze locked with hers, a silent communion passing between them, a shared understanding of the precipice they stood upon. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement that was both tender and powerful, he joined them. A gasp escaped her lips, a blend of surprise and exquisite pleasure as their bodies became one. It was a sensation unlike any she had ever known, a feeling of completeness, of a missing piece, finally slotting into place. The world outside, the storm, the cabin, faded into a distant hum. All that existed was this moment. This man. This profound connection. He moved slowly at first, allowing her time to adjust, to absorb the incredible sensation. She wrapped her legs around his waist, pulling him deeper, her body instinctively responding to his rhythm. A sigh of pure contentment escaped her as he began to move with a steady rhythmic grace, a primal dance that spoke to the deepest parts of her being. With each thrust, a wave of sensation washed over her, building slowly, steadily, like the tide coming in. She closed her eyes, her head falling back against the pillow, giving herself over entirely to the moment, to the symphony of touch and feeling. His breath was ragged against her ear, his body trembling with the effort of holding back, of drawing out their shared pleasure. She could feel the power in him, held in check by a tenderness that moved her to her core. The tempo quickened, their breaths mingling, their bodies glistening with a fine sheen of sweat. Her own moans grew louder, more urgent, as the pleasure intensified, coiling tighter and tighter within her. She felt herself spiraling, rising higher and higher on the cusp of something magnificent, something utterly consuming. "Look at me," he whispered, his voice hoarse with desire. Her eyes fluttered open, meeting his intense gaze. In their depths, she saw not just passion, but a profound tenderness, a deep connection that transcended the physical. It was a look that promised forever, a promise whispered in the language of touch and breath. And then, the world exploded. A wave of pure, unadulterated sensation crashed over her, a release so powerful it stole her breath, leaving her trembling and utterly undone. She cried out, his name a raw sound on her lips, her body arching into his, clinging to him as if he were her only anchor in the tumultuous sea of pleasure. He followed her swiftly, a guttural groan escaping him as he found his own release, pouring into her, completing the sacred act of their union. They lay together afterwards, entangled, breathless, the silence in the room punctuated only by their ragged breathing, and the soft patter of residual rain against the window pane. The storm outside had truly passed, leaving behind a profound stillness, a sense of peace that now settled over them. He held her close, his arms wrapped tightly around her, his chin resting on her head. She felt utterly safe, utterly cherished. A warmth spreading through her that had nothing to do with physical heat and everything to do with the profound connection they had just forged. "Are you all right?" he murmured, his voice soft, a hint of concern lacing his tone. She shifted, pressing a soft kiss to his shoulder. "More than all right," she whispered, her voice still a little shaky. "I'm complete." He tightened his embrace, a soft sigh escaping him. "Me too," he confessed, his voice thick with emotion. He kissed the top of her head, a tender, possessive gesture. I never imagined I could feel this way." They lay there for a long time, simply holding each other, allowing the afterglow to wash over them, content in the quiet intimacy they shared. The air was thick with unspoken promises, with a nascent future that stretched out before them, shimmering with possibility. Eventually, exhaustion claimed them, and they drifted off to sleep, still entwined, the soft rhythm of their breathing a lullaby in the quiet cabin. She awoke slowly the next morning, a feeling of profound contentment settling over her. Sunlight, pale and soft, streamed through the window, painting stripes across the wooden floor. The fire in the hearth was long dead, but the cabin held a lingering warmth, a cozy embrace. She was still wrapped in his arms, her head nestled against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. His scent, now mingled with her own, was intoxicating, familiar, comforting. She stirred, stretching languidly, and felt his arms tighten around her. His eyes fluttered open, a sleepy smile gracing his lips as he looked down at her. His gaze, still heavy with sleep, held a new softness, a tenderness that made her heart ache in the best possible way. "Morning," he murmured, his voice husky. "Morning," she replied, a smile blooming on her face. She reached up, tracing the line of his jaw, feeling the stubble that had grown overnight. "Sleep well?" He chuckled softly. "The best sleep I've had in years." His gaze swept over her face, lingering on her lips. "How about you?" "Perfect," she confessed, feeling a blush creep up her neck. She remembered every detail of the night before, a vivid tapestry of sensation and emotion. There was no awkwardness, only a comfortable intimacy that felt as natural as breathing. They spent the morning in the cabin, moving slowly, savoring the quiet aftermath of the storm and their shared night. He made coffee, strong and fragrant, while she found some leftover bread and berries. They sat by the now relit fire, wrapped in blankets, talking in soft tones, their hands finding each other's, their gazes lingering. They spoke of small things, of the storm, of the cabin's history. But beneath the surface, a deeper conversation was taking place, a silent agreement to explore this new, profound connection. As the sun climbed higher, casting brighter light through the windows, they knew it was time to leave. The world outside beckoned, but it felt different now, imbued with a new significance. Dressing was a shared act, a comfortable familiarity replacing the charged anticipation of the previous night. When they were ready, standing by the door, he took her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. "This trip," he began, his voice low, his eyes searching hers, "it was more than I expected." She squeezed his hand, her heart full. "More than I ever dreamed." He pulled her into a gentle embrace, holding her close, pressing a soft kiss to her temple. "I don't want this to end here," he whispered. "It won't," she promised, her voice firm, resolute. "This is just the beginning." They stepped out of the cabin, leaving behind the warmth and intimacy of their sanctuary. The world outside was crisp and clean, washed fresh by the rain. The air smelled of damp earth and pine, and the sky was a brilliant clear blue, promising a beautiful day. Hand in hand, they walked towards his waiting car, their steps light, their hearts full, ready to face whatever lay ahead, knowing that they had found something truly extraordinary in the heart of the storm. The tempest had raged, clearing the way for a love that was just beginning to bloom, strong and vibrant, under the promise of a new, brighter dawn.